Elijah Ford is a guest of today's on-air show. Hi, welcome, how are you?
I'm good, happy to be here.
The first question is always the same in this show. What was the last music you listened to? You don't remember?
I don't remember. We played last night and I went out in town and then I got 2 hours of sleep and woke up and took 2 plane flights here. Roman played some great soul music on the way. Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. That was the last song I listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not your first visit in Czech Republic. You played here in 12-17, I think, as far as I know, on several places. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, it was my birthday when we played the Hard Rock Cafe, and we did a radio show that was sold out, and yeah, it was wonderful. I think we all fell in love with Prague and the country at large.
You have been surrounded by music since your childhood. Both your parents are musicians. Your father was playing with the Black Crowes band, which is also very popular in Czech Republic. How do you remembering the first time you realized that something is different than the other kids in kindergarten, probably?
Well, my dad was gone a lot as a part of his job, so that was maybe something I realized before I realized why he was gone, and then I fell in love with that too. But it was fun to travel as a kid, go see him in New York or, visit and see why are all these people staring at my dad? But it was fun.
Were you popular among your classmates because of that?
Oh, no. Nobody cared about the Black Crowes. I mean, as a teenager, they had come and gone by the time I was that age. And, as an elementary school kid going to a Christian private school, no. In fact, it was probably the opposite. Who's that rock and roll family? What are they doing here? But,
Kids usually tend to revolt to their fathers with rock music, but how can you revolt to your father when he's a rock star?
Well, I didn't like him for a while because of that. I think our relationship was strained because he was gone. And all of the trappings that come with the rock and roll lifestyle. But I found my own way to music, puberty in high school is hard for most humans with feelings. So music was safe and I found myself through that. So then I started to understand my dad more and then we developed a relationship through playing music together and touring. So it was a long road, but I actually just produced a record, his new record, and we love singing and writing and playing together, so I'm really thankful for that. The way that the relationship developed allowed for it to be richer, I think.
Do you remember the first time when you grabbed the guitar, because you must have been surrounded by guitars, and seriously play something on it?
I remember he left me written on some notebook paper, the 3 chords for Back in Black for AC/DC, right. And I think I was 7 or 8, and so I gave that a shot, and it hurt my fingers and whatever, and I put it down. But when he was on tour, when I was 12 or 13, again, that puberty time, realized I started gravitating towards it and learning songs. Also, I was lucky that the internet had tabs by then, so I could sort of teach myself. And when he would come back every couple months from tour, ask him something else. But I would say I really started around 12.
As far as I know, in 17 you started to play with his band Fuzz Machine. Is it correct? How do you remember playing with your father in the band?
It was incredible. It was everything I wanted to do. I mean, I couldn't find people my age in high school to take it seriously, or maybe I wasn't looking hard enough, or I didn't know how to lead a band then, but I would watch my dad make records, produce, and go to shows and tag along, and so I left school early, and I think he was trying to be a good dad and give me something to do, so he didn't need another guitar player, but he hired me for a tour in I think it was mostly Spain, and it was life-changing just to see, oh, this is how it works, and the confidence that comes with performing every night and learning, and the other guys in his band, you know, were not my peers. They were my dad's, and so there was a lot to learn, and yeah, there was no going back after that.
But in 17, you were underage and playing in clubs with rock and roll bands. 17 years, your father, lots of conflicts. I can see lots of conflicts. How it worked?
Well, I mean, sometimes I had to wait in the back of the building until I could go on stage, or couldn't leave this section of backstage, and I had to be escorted, you know. But that was America. Over here, I guess we're a little more relaxed about the drinking age, so not that I was out here to get hammered, but like, you know, I was here to do a job, and they respected that, and I did my job. So by the time we toured over here, it was not really a thing. It was more just, I was so hungry and excited, and, you know, it's amazing.
You mentioned AC/DC. Who were your guitar heroes during your puberty and growing up?
Jimmy Page, I think, like Led Zeppelin was pretty much all I cared to learn on the guitar, unless it was like a Nirvana song. But the records I kept listening to, which I think more defined my like palette and sense of melody, are Pink Floyd and the Beatles and Neil Young. Neil Young's a guitar hero too. There's a reverence for what he's playing. It's brutal. You know, and then you have people like Harrison, where it's very pretty and meticulous, and I love that too. And somewhere in the middle, I think, is like Johnny Greenwood with Radiohead. You have the violence of Neil Young, and you have the composition of someone like Harrison, you know? So those are like some tent poles that I look up to and reference, but yeah.
Some might say that blues rock music haven't changed for 70 years, but it still attracts new audience, young people. It's still interesting for people. Why do you think it works this way? Why people still listen old rock music?
Well, there's a lot of feeling in it. I think that like human connection roots music. You know, it's deep inside. Like, it's a traditional form, so I think we're going to continue to return to that, because you've got 11 notes and only so many chord sequences to put them in, so we found something that works, and anybody can pick up an instrument and play blues or folk or country, and so I think artists can find themselves in that and then grow outward. But I think that's always going to be relevant. And the guy I play with now, Gary Clark Jr., a blues musician by and large, but the way he transcends that genre by incorporating, you know, hip hop and R&B and pop and sequencers. You know, there's, you know, it's a foundation. It's a starting place. I think it'll always be there.
If you listen to some 60s blues rock music, I don't know, something like Jimi Hendrix maybe, and Gary Clark Jr., what is the main difference you can hear in their music? It's the incorporation of the new elements or technology?
Yeah, and I think that were Jimmy alive today, he would be incorporating those elements too. I think that in the innovation part of being a writer is making noise with whatever tools are available. And there's a lot more tools nowadays. So, yeah, I think it's indicative of the time we're in, the way records sound, and so what technologies are being used. But also we're using some of the same fuzz pedals he was, because those sounded the best. So, you know.
How about the message of the music? Has it changed till 60s?
I hope that some of that revolutionary thought is coming back, because this is a difficult time that we live in, and I think artists should acknowledge that. I think on one hand, you want to have peace and escape when you listen to music and go someplace where you don't have to worry about all of the bullshit in the world. And on the other hand, I think we also connect with artists because of the way that they talk about things that are important to them, and to be a reflection of that and not stop because it's because this is the time we live in. I think in the 60s it was very indicative of the social, sexual, political, drug revolution, and now it's a little more convoluted because we're also interconnected, but I think it's important to find some angle on it. And, but I also don't want to listen to an hour-long record where it's only preaching at me. You know what I mean? It's just balance.
Do you listen to any music outside of the genre? What kind of do you like?
Yeah. Well, growing up in my dad's home, it was a lot of classic rock. You know, Dylan and and P-Funk, which I remembered once I started rehearsing with Gary and JJ, and I hadn't put those records on in years, and Mothership Connection used to scare me. Yeah. Just the sounds and the cover and who are these freaks? And but I really love, there's a lot of great music going on nowadays. Angel Olsen's new record's incredible. Radiohead will always have my heart. St. Vincent's incredible. I mean, there's so much great stuff happening now. And I think you can always put on Curtis Mayfield or Al Green or the Kinks. There's always going to be that. And I think the challenge is to keep seeking out what is happening now. Because new technologies, how are these people using them? What are they talking about? And art needs to reflect the time that we're in. And so I think it's important to stay plugged in as somebody that likes to work with other bands as well as the band that I'm in, you know.
Mentioning Johnny Greenboot and Radiohead, how do you like The Smile, their new band?
It's awesome.
Yeah?
I almost considered catching a plane because they're on tour while we're on tour over here and we're just barely missing each other. But I love that it seems a little more playful, like kind of post-punky, you know, than
maybe almost proto-punk.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I would love to be in a room with that happening. I really want to find a show. They just announced an American tour, so maybe I'm not going to be on the road and can catch it.
You mentioned Gary Clark Jr. You play with him since 2020, as far as I know. How it happened? Because you play with him on bass. You play a bass with the band.
Yeah, JJ, the drummer, I hired him to play on my record, and that was 2018, 19, and so I called him over the pandemic just to check in. You know, a bunch of us musicians were sitting at home twiddling our thumbs because we can't do anything, and I asked him what he'd been up to, and he said he'd been jamming with Gary. I said, I was surprised. I knew he's had the same band for so long, and I asked who else was playing, and he said, well, we don't have a bass player right now. I said, well, that sounds amazing. So if you need another name, I'd be happy to come jam sometime. And so a month later, I got a call from him and Zapata, the guitar player, within a couple hours of each other, like, hey, I think we're going to have you come by. And that was, I think, September of 2020. And so there was a few times that month I knew they were seeing other people, and just kind of like showing up and jamming. And there were a couple songs that, you know, of Gary's that we'd play, but a lot of it was just sitting in a room like this, and someone would come up with an idea and we'd all riff on it and play it for 30 minutes and see where it goes. And I think it was more about developing conversation and chemistry, and it was intense and beautiful, and it worked out. You are supporting Guns N' Roses now on tour. How the tour is going? Great. I'm tired. I hope I don't look as tired as I feel. No, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, dude, we played to 45,000 people last night. That's crazy, you know. The first gig in Lisbon, Slash came up to us afterwards and thanked thanked us for being there, and you can tell he genuinely loves Gary and his music, and he was on the side stage with Duff watching our set, and so it feels, not just like any old band they could have, because
it's not the usual.
They don't need an opening band. Yeah. They're going to sell enough tickets, But it's been interesting to sort of think about the set for people that aren't there to see us, and how to keep the rhythm up, and what songs to play to engage people that are there to see not us, which is very different when we have someone for 2 hours that paid to see Gary, and we can stretch out and, play deeper cuts or what have you. So it's been a fun challenge, and I think we figured it out. Last night was great.
That's awesome. How their fans accepting you?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with us, our approach. And when you have that many people, there's always someone you can look at that is having a good time, and there's always someone you can look at that is not having a good time. Okay. So I think it's about where
to look,
where your focus is. Yeah. But if we can get the first, 15 rows, if there's some dancing going on and some smiling, and then great. You just sort of have to trust that it's working, because there's too many people.
You have just released EP Volume 1, Price Inside. Mm-hmm. So how differs your music from the music you play with Gary Clark Jr.?
Well, I guess as soon as I picked up the guitar, I've been writing things as well, and that's always been a passion of mine. And so I got hired to play guitar for Juanita Stein, and she was opening for the Killers. And so we had 2 European tours in 2017 and 18, I think. And I hit it off with the bass player, Jake, and I was demoing for a new record at that point. So I sent him the SoundCloud link, and I liked what he had to say about Juanita's set and my tone and my approach, because he had recorded with Juanita, so he was very inside the music. And we hit it off. He had some good things to say about my songs, and so I flew him out to Texas to record, and we had a blast and co-wrote and kept the relationship going, and so when there were breaks, he would fly out. But I guess all that to say, I had a bunch of rock songs written that I thought that he would connect with because of his day job. They were sort of Killers-y, big guitar, synth, driving, and he skipped over all of that and went straight to the more Beach Boys, Harry Nilsson, 60s stuff. Yeah. And so that was really nice for me to create some sort of division, because it helped. I have too many songs I'd like to record. Okay, if somebody's drawn to these, let's do that. And then we started co-writing. So this, I'm calling it Volume 1, because we have a whole bunch more that when we both have breaks in our touring schedule, I want to honor Jake and I's partnership by showing to, this is what we do together. But as far as it's different, I just love to play. So I'm happy to get in any band I can fit in, as long as I connect with what's going on. And Gary's a no-brainer. He can sing with the best of them and play with the best of them. His writing's top-notch, so this is just it's a dream gig. So in between, I got to keep doing what I love to do, and that's this. So it's great to, that 2017 tour here, our week in the Czech Republic was probably the best week of the tour. So I brought a bunch of tapes, and you guys can have some, and when there's a solid break with Gary, I'd love to come back and play with Roman, and, So as far as how it's different, you'll have to listen, but there's certainly classic rock crossover. Maybe there's just a little bit more, I don't know, British invasion than what
many
Gary's
influences.
doing.
I listened to it yesterday. I really liked it. And will there be a Volume 2? Yeah.
I think we're going to be able to meet up in November to finish a few more. So I would love to press Volume 1 and Volume 2 on one 12-inch vinyl, hopefully, next year.
In general, there is a huge revival of the blues rock garage bands, like the Black Keys, War on Drugs maybe, Royal Blood. How do you like it, the movement in general?
Well, I don't know that it ever like went away. I remember like when the Black Keys and the White Stripes came out in like the early 2000s, there was like that garage rock revival, and the Strokes were somehow attached to that, and like Jet, and like there was, and then Kings of Leon a few years later, you know. So this sort of like indie rock blues thing, I think, is great that bands with instruments are in the public eye again, but now there's so many more pop acts, there's so many things happening simultaneously that we can all listen to off of our phone that it's hard to see a movement from where I'm sitting. You know, it's cool that like Silk Sonic, for instance, is really refreshing because you have a pop star and a brilliant rapper, hip hop artist, and they're doing this 70s
greatest
funk. It's it's so fun. We got to see them in Vegas, and the show was incredible. And so, like those sorts of, there's always nods to the music that I grew up on, and the parts of Gary that are more classic rock oriented, if you will. So I think there's, from wherever you're looking at it, those threads are there. I think there's always like a movement going, especially with how many bands that are on Spotify that we've never heard of, you know. But I'm glad Jack White and the Black Keys are still at it.
We said you play guitar, you play bass. What do you enjoy more?
It's very different to lead a band and play guitar and sing. It's a lot of work. It's really fulfilling, but I'm really glad I don't have to do that all the time. And it's really wonderful to be a support role and just hold it down for someone like Gary or my dad, and just unleash and make them feel, you know, like, we got you anywhere you want to go. And I don't know. It depends on the day, really.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thanks for having me.
Jestli se vám pořad On Air líbí, dejte like a odebírejte YouTube kanál kytary.cz.